The news, Scotland Decides, from Kelso, introduced by James Cook.
Welcome to the referendum debate. Still 7 months to go, but the campaign is heating up. David Cameron has asked people around the UK to pick up the phone and urge friends and family in Scotland to vote no. Now the arguments are raging over the pound and Europe, with accusations of bluff, bluster and bullying. What do the voters make of it all? We've come to the borders to see which questions people here want answered. On our panel tonight, two prominent politicians from each side of the debate. The SNP's Treasury spokesman at Westminster, Stuart Hosey, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Ruth Davidson, Labour's Deputy Finance spokeswoman in the Scottish Parliament, Jenny Mara, and the co-convener of the Scottish Greens, Patrick Harvie. Tonight, we're in Kelso. Sir Walter Scott called Kelso the most beautiful village in Scotland, and it's hard to disagree with him. The town sits prettily on the banks of the Tweed, a river famous for marking the division of two ancient nations. Here, the idea of a border is not an abstract one. Kelso grew up around the Benedictine Abbey, founded here in 1128. In the centuries that followed, both church and town suffered from repeated English invasions. Trade has always been important to Kelso. Livestock, beer, shoes and fabrics are all woven into its story. A 19th century tourist guide described its people as having a great reputation for business habits, although it added they had been considered slack in their observance of the duties of religion and hospitality. Well, I don't know about religion, but we've certainly had hospitality here tonight, and I'm sure that will continue. And in the interests of a good debate, we have an even split here between supporters and opponents of independence, plus some who are undecided. Our audience have submitted their questions, and our panel here have not seen those questions. So let's go to our first question now, which comes from Elizabeth Cleghorn.
Is Alex Salmond a man with no plan?
Is Alex Salmond a man with no plan? Ruth Davidson.
Well, I think the plans that he's been setting out are rapidly beginning to fall apart. In the last week, we've seen his plans on a currency union be decried not just by the chairman of the head of the Bank of England, but from the Institute of Directors, from the CBI. We've seen the Chief Secretary to the Treasury say that he would advise strongly, not just this government, but any government against signing up to this. We've also seen the chair of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso, say his plan on Europe, as it has changed down the weeks and months, it is just not going to fly. So I think there are questions that need answered. I don't think Alex Salmond's speech yesterday clarified any of the questions that were there, and I think his plan is rapidly falling apart. OK, Alex Salmond. Alex Salmond, of course, talking a lot about currency this week in response to the views of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and indeed the people who've suggested he has no plan include the Prime Minister. Patrick Harvie, you have a different view on currency. Mr Salmond wants to share the pound in a formal currency union. You disagree. Why?
Well, I think even Alex Salmond has recognised in talking about the fiscal commission that the Scottish Government set up, the report that it's published sets out a range of viable options, all described as viable options, real choices that Scotland could make in relation to currency. Now, the SNP has its preferred policy, and I would be absolutely the last person to say that they should dump that policy because George Osborne tells them to. That would be...
But nonetheless, if not just George Osborne, but Labour and the Liberal Democrats all say we will not agree on the behalf of the rest of the UK to this formal currency union, then is it not the case that, as the questioner suggests, Alex Salmond doesn't have a plan?
Well, on the first point, this is not all about Alex Salmond. This is about a range of views that exist on both sides. On both sides of the independence debate, there's a range of views about how Scotland should go forward, under devolution or under independence. Both sides you'll find a range of views. So this isn't just about one man. But certainly if the UK government, the current UK government, sees a yes vote take place in September this year, and everybody, you know, winning side has their party, losing side licks their wounds, everybody gets over it and accepts the democratic will of the Scottish people, I think it would be absurd and outrageous, and not in their interests, for a UK government, for its first act, its first decision to be simply to fold their arms and say, we're not even going to sit at the table and discuss with the Scottish government what the best transition is.
Right.
And whether that transition is to the currency union, the monetary union that the SNP policy prefers, or to some other option, there will need to be goodwill, negotiation, and a willingness to accept the democratic choice of the people of Scotland.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
One of the reasons I have great concern about where we're going with the referendum debate is Alex Salmond says, yes, we can. Nicola Sturgeon, when she's asked today in Parliament, what's it going to cost Scotland to export into England? No answer. They blame somebody else. The trouble is we need hard facts from the Government of Scotland and where we're going. The currency is one, sovereignty is these are the crucial issues. We need straight answers and not...
On
flim-flam.
currency, what do you want to know from Stuart Hosey?
Well, I'm a farmer and I farm here on the Scottish side of the border. All my lamb go down to England. And if we talk about the currency costs of England exporting to Scotland, I want to know what it's going to cost me to send my lamb and my beef down to England. No answers. You didn't answer the question. You can give an answer for 500 million for England coming into Scotland. Why can't you tell us what it's going to cost us to go down the other way?
How much will it cost him?
It will cost exactly the same as it costs today because it makes sense to have a formal currency union. And the reason I say that is the answer George Osborne didn't give when he came to Scotland. The answer he didn't give when he ran away from journalists. He refuses to say how much it will cost in balance of trade terms, how much it will cost to English business if we were somehow impossibly forced out of sterling. And the reason I'm so certain that we will have sterling, there'll be a formal currency union, is not just because it makes sense for Scotland, not just because it makes sense for you, because it makes sense for everybody across this island. We want independence. We want Scotland to take its own political decisions. But we keep the trade, we keep the social union, we keep the common travel area, and we keep the currency precisely because it is in everybody's best interests.
You know, Stuart, it's maybe common sense. It's maybe common sense for your campaign or for Alex Salmond, but actually the political reality, and that's what we've got to look at here, because if Scotland votes yes, how on earth are English and Welsh MPs going to sell this to their constituents? That they should enter into a currency union with us, who have just rejected them. You know, they should give up sovereignty as part of the currency union. They're just not going to buy it. And unfortunately, that is the political reality and not the common sense solution that the SNP are looking for. I think the case that Alex Salmond is putting forward is a mess now. It's a complete disaster. It's been completely discredited. We won't get the pound. Nicola Sturgeon said today we won't be going into the euro. So what currency will we have?
Well, the answer...
Are you suggesting, Stuart Hosey, are you suggesting, as I think you did a minute ago, it is impossible that a currency union is rejected, a formal currency union?
No, I'm saying that having looked at every single one of the currency options for an independent Scotland, as Patrick pointed out, many of which are perfectly viable, the conclusion was that the formal currency union is in everybody's best interests. And it's interesting Jenny talks about political realities. The business reality is fascinating. Todd's Murray, the consultant firm, said they called on the UK government to rethink its opposition to a currency union because business understands this makes sense. And I think when the pressure comes on George Osborne from English business as well as from Scottish business to stop playing politics and start having meaningful talks, then we'll get the answer, which is in everyone's best interest.
Yes, the lady in pink.
Aside from the political posturing of both the yes and the no camp, surely the most important thing to the people of Scotland is not what the currency is called, but what it can do for them or not do for them. Surely it's important that whatever currency we have is enough that people can live at a decent, respectable and acceptable level.
Well said.
Okay. And the woman in purple.
Surely the Westminster government actually can't stop Scotland using the pound unilaterally, because if they did, they would have to actually implement foreign exchange controls.
OK, yeah, Ruth Davidson, there's been a lot of suggestions this week that if Scotland walks away from the UK, said the Chancellor, it walks away from the pound. Well, he doesn't have the power to do that. I mean, Scotland could use the pound. It's a tradable currency, no?
Well, in terms of sterlingisation, yes, of course, in the same way that Panama uses the US dollar, but that doesn't bring in all of the other things that the SNP want from a currency union.
So in what sense is
For
Scotland
example,
walking away from the pound if it walks away from the UK?
It's walking away from the backing of the Bank of England, it's walking away from the regulatory function, it's walking away from a lender of last resort, it's walking away from all of the institutions that underpin, because the pound isn't just the paper and the coins, the pound of all of these other things as well. And I think what's interesting is that I understand why Stuart says that a currency union would be best for an independent Scotland. What they haven't told us is why that would be best for the rest of the UK. And I think this is an exceptionally hard sell to say to people in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, that actually we are going to be a lender of last resort to a foreign country. We are going to offer to bail out banks in a foreign country should they fail. We are going to underpin their body of trade. It doesn't work like that. And it's not just about people who are politicians saying that, it's independent people too. If I could just read out what the Institute of Directors said, saying about a new currency, saying that it would cost money if you had to have transaction costs for business. He says, this inconvenience would pale in comparison to the financial danger of entering an unstable currency union. Okay. So the costs are much less than the risks of having a currency union to the rest of the UK. OK. The gentleman on the edge, in the yellow tie, yes.
You've only got to look at the euro to see what the dangers are of having a currency union without a political union. It falls apart because you need that fiscal restraint.
OK, thank you. And the lady, the woman, yes, over there, just at the back,
I'd like to ask Stuart a question. Before the financial crisis of 2008, Alex Salmond is reported to have said that sterling is a millstone around the neck of Scotland. What has made him change his mind?
This was... This was a speech to the Centre for European Policy Studies on, to be fair, slightly earlier than that, but it was before the crash, the 9th of November 1999. Sterling said Alex Salmond was a millstone round Scotland's neck. Now, we understand the circumstances of the euro have changed. Why have the circumstances of sterling changed? Why is it now the right thing for Scotland?
Let's just be clear, there's been a huge amount of political change on currency, except for the Liberals who still want us to go under the euro.
Never mind the Liberals. Let's answer the question about your policy, not their policy. Why is sterling no longer a millstone around Scotland's neck?
Because when you look at the practical effects of keeping sterling, when you look at us becoming independent and maintaining trade, benefiting both sides of the border, the conclusion that the Fiscal Commission came to was that sterling, through a formal currency union, was the correct thing to do. And it also answers the gentleman who asked the question with the yellow tie about the Eurozone and about stability. The difficulties in the Eurozone didn't happen because there wasn't political union. It happened because productivity between Greece and Germany was absolutely miserable. Scottish and English productivity is almost identical. But the point you make about stability is essential, which is why the Fiscal Commission proposed the stability mechanisms to ensure there is no undue risk taken on either side of the border by the taxpayers in England or the taxpayers in Scotland, to make sure that both countries work to within certain tolerances on debt and deficit so that the currency union actually functions properly and in a stable way.
Sure, I need to challenge you. I need to challenge that, because the trade argument that the SNP is running doesn't actually add up, because the rest of the UK shares 20% of its trade with America and 40% of its trade with Europe, but only 10% of its trade with Scotland. Nobody's suggesting we should be in a currency union with the dollar. Nobody's suggesting that we should be in a currency union with the euro. So your trade argument just doesn't add up, Stuart.
OK, hang on. I want to come to Patrick Harvey. I mean, Patrick Harvey, the pound, in your view, is a millstone round Scotland's neck, isn't it?
I've never used that phrase.
No, but it's the logic of your argument.
I agree with the Fiscal Commission when it says that a separate Scottish currency would give us the maximum economic flexibility to a Scottish government to make economic choices. To get to what the lady in the third row talked about an economy that serves the well-being of all our people, rather than serving the interests of bankers. I'm voting yes because I want different economic policy than I think is likely to materialise from the UK. But look, the reality is, whichever view you take about that, or whichever view you take if you're voting no about how much home rule Scotland should have within the UK, we are in a period before the referendum when both sides are pitching for your votes. And I would ask you to consider which kind of politicians do you want to be in a position of influence after the referendum. Do you want the kind of politicians who are willing to put ideas on the table and then discuss them, or those who will close down debate, close down the opportunities for a better kind of economy? That's the important question, is what kind of society and what kind of politics do we want to be? Very briefly also, this has been a bit of a roll of the dice from George Osborne. He doesn't know whether this will successfully scare people or actually anger people about the attitude. But the real roll of the dice is, it actually puts the no parties on a difficult spot, because Ruth and Jenny will have to decide, if the people of Scotland decide to vote yes to independence, what is their preferred currency option for Scotland if they're ruling out this one?
Let's ask Jenny Maddox.
Nobody's more uncomfortable than me with George Osborne coming up to Edinburgh, giving a speech, rolling out again. You know,
but you think he's
I
right.
am not. But he has a job to do. He is Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he's surrounded by civil servants who are looking at this and looking at the workability and the feasibility of having a currency union, and they have said in no uncertain terms that it's not workable, and the political reality is that it will not happen. So I think we should stop debating the ins and outs of the currency union, because actually it's not going to happen. The question now for the SNP and for Alex Salmond, for Stuart Hosey, is what currency are we going to have?
You just said we should stop debating it. Which is it?
There we have it. We have to stop debating Scotland's future because George Osborne has said so. A Labour politician who has disagreed with almost everything the Tories have ever said, I suspect, Jenny, since you were about 5 years old, all of a sudden, when it comes to talking Scotland down, rolls over and has her tummy tickled by a Tory Chancellor. Outrageous.
People have said that they want information. In this debate, people have said that they want facts and information. And if the Chief Secretary of the Treasury has told not just this government, but all parties down south, that he could not, in all good conscience, recommend to any government of the rest of the UK that should go into a currency union, it is incumbent upon any member of that government to tell the people of Scotland that that is the advice that they've been given. It's about putting information on the table.
We'll take a few more points and then we'll move on, because there are other issues than currency. Yes, sir, in the middle.
What would be the consequences of simply having a new currency for an independent Scotland?
OK, that's a very big question to introduce at this late stage of this subject, but we'll see if we can answer it in a minute. Down the front, all of you have your hands up. Let's start at the edge. Yes.
Isn't the truth of the matter here that the Scottish Government has given us a 670-page document that articulates a possible future? The Greens have put forward a possible future for Scotland. The only plan the No camp have at the moment is to scare Scots into voting no.
And yes, the woman in purple.
Ruth Davison was saying that we really want to see all the cards on the table, which we do. Now, according to Alex Salmond, as quoted today in the papers, he has given us his best plan. How do we know it's his best plan if we don't know what the others are?
OK, Stuart Hosey, very briefly.
Let's be very brief. I think the question at the front here was really important. There is a plan from the Scottish Government and from the Yes side. It's a white paper with all of the other material which has been provided. What we don't have is a plan A from the no people about what happens in the event of a no vote. So I want them to explain to you today, when are they going to cut $4 billion from Scotland's budget? Why are Labour MPs not even turning up to Labour's conference, so angry that there might even be a little more devolution? The Scottish Government's plan for independence is published. We're discussing it in detail. It's the right thing to do. There is precisely nothing from the no camp to explain what they're going to do to Scotland in the event of a no vote.
All right. Right, we'll move on to our next question. Alison McWilliam has this one. Alison McWilliam.
Gordon Brown today tells me I should be worried about my pension. Is that a fair comment?
OK, under independence. This is his point, yes, that you should be worried about your pension under independence. Stuart Hosey, should people be worried about their pensions?
I think they should be worried because he took £100 billion from people's pension funds with a change to advanced corporation tax in 1997. That would worry me greatly. You should be worried when the man who gave pensioners an insulting 75p rise starts pontificating. But in terms of independence, no, you shouldn't. Because right now, Scotland spends a smaller share of our money on pensions and benefits. We are better placed to meet our obligations in the future than we are as part of the UK, and I very much look forward to the proper consideration of how we increase pensions, how we keep the pension credit, how we actually have a pension age that matches life expectancy in Scotland, rather than be dragged down this route by George Osborne, which is clearly failing and is going to impoverish pensioners in years to come.
I think Alison's absolutely right to ask about pensions, because pensions is the key thing that we all save for through our lives and prevent pensioners from falling into poverty, and it is a really important thing. I think being part of a larger pension pot of 60 million people is a much better plan than being part of a smaller pension pot of 5 million people. I think when you look at some of the advances we've made, the pension credits, which have lifted so many pensions out of poverty, the pension protection fund, I think we need to look at all these measures, but look at our pensions in that wider economy of 60 million people. I think it would be a risk if we don't even know what currency we're going to be using in an independent Scotland, which is what we've learnt this weekend. How can we be sure about our pensions? I think it's a safer option to stay.
OK, yes, in the middle, in the pink shirt.
Is it not a case that Scotland's got a growing and ageing population, and what we've been given by Alex Salmond is not a plan A or a plan McB, but a plan McMe.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Is it true the recent story in the newspapers about Ian Duncan Smith actually is talking about privatising the state pension down in England and Wales at the moment?
Ruth Davidson?
Well, no, and I think what we've also seen from the coalition government with the triple lock is in the last budget we saw the biggest rise ever in the state pension.
What is the triple lock?
It means that it's
really
got to
simply,
rise.
Please.
No, it's got to rise either by inflation or by wages or by... Basically, so it's got to go up by
What's the third one? 2.5%.
2.5%. So thank you, Stuart.
Okay.
Whichever is the highest, so it always goes up. So it was more than £5 a week it went up by the last time, which is the biggest ever single rise. But for me, when it comes to contributing to a state pension, if everybody is paying in and contributing, you know, I want to make sure that a pensioner in Cardiff gets the same amount as a pensioner in Kirkcaldy. That's what being all one country is. And I like the fact that we've got security right across the nation. But I don't think we should confuse the state pension with pension schemes, whether they're work schemes or they're local authority schemes or whatever. And if people here are quite rightly confused sometimes by the politicians going at it hammer and tongs, let's listen to the independents in this. Let's listen to the Institute of Chartered Accountants for Scotland. They're the people who know. They asked a huge number of questions of the Scottish Government of what their proposals were under an independent Scotland. They pointed out big issues of hundreds of millions of pounds of holes, black holes in pension schemes because of European law and cross-border schemes and how you wouldn't be allowed them. The SNP didn't answer those questions, so ICAS, that same institute, had to come back and say, look, these are all the questions you haven't answered. And for the sake of everybody in this country that wants to go forward and know that they will be paid, not just in, you know, whether it's in pounds or in euros or doubloons or groats or whatever, but want to know that there will not be those black holes in their pension pot, then actually I think it's incumbent on Alex Salmond to answer the questions that the accountants are asking.
Can you answer mine now then, please? Can you answer my question now? I asked, is it true that Ian Duncan Smith is going to be... Well, what is the story behind it then?
Well, I have no idea, but I would say don't always believe everything that you read in the newspapers.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Everything you hear on the BBC, on the other hand, is another matter. Patrick Harvey.
Well, I would certainly echo that you shouldn't believe everything you read in newspapers, nor everything you hear from the lips of Conservative ministers in the UK government.
The question was, Gordon Brown is worried about my pension under independence. Should I be? I'm
worried about pensions as well. I think anybody who understands the issues facing ageing societies, the issues facing societies with a chronic inequality gap between those who can afford to pay for private pensions and for those who don't have that advantage, who don't have that ability. And for societies where we're seeing a stubborn problem of economic inactivity among young people who can't get work and then contribute to the economy. Anybody in any society, and it's happening not just here, not just in Scotland and the rest of the UK and Europe, but it's happening in many economies around the world, should be worried about what we do about pensions. I think the opportunities that we have to grasp are, first of all, we're starting as a rich country, a relatively rich country, whether you see that as the UK or Scotland. And if we were part of a bigger pot that shared resources fairly, that did distribute the risks and benefits of the economy in a fair way, in an equal way, as Gordon Brown's argument suggests, then that might be an argument for keeping it. But we're not. We're part of an economy that has left us one of the most unequal countries on the planet. Okay, one of the most unequal countries on the planet. That is not a record of economic success. That's a record of economic failure, and we should ditch it.
Yes.
Gordon Brown is a Chancellor who dispensed with the 10% tax rate, thus consigning millions of poorest people in Britain to poverty. So he has no position to lecture to the people of Scotland about pensions or anything else.
Yes, sir, in the light blue shirt.
Why is nobody mentioning the oil? Now, clearly we'd be able to afford our pensions or any other expenses that come in. So why is nobody mentioning it?
OK, the man behind you is shaking his head.
It's been run for 40 years.
Finding more.
Yes, the man behind you, yeah.
Thank you. The number of households aged 65 and over in Scotland will increase by 63% over the next 20 years, statistically, to a quarter of the total of the population of Scotland. What would an independent Scotland do to deal with this demographic time bomb?
OK, thank you. And it's worth pointing out that there's been a lot of research published on this in the last couple of weeks. I mean, one paper from David Bell and others suggested that the costs of the state pension would be lower in Scotland for the sad reason that we die earlier. But it did back up your point. Scotland has a relatively smaller working age population than the rest of the UK, and therefore that problem would be exacerbated. Stuart Hosey, isn't that the bigger of those problems?
Well, all of these problems are real. All of these challenges are real. But the demographic challenge, I think the IFS described it as shared in common with almost every other country in Western Europe. The trick is, with independence, to have the tools and levers to fix that. If we could create more jobs to keep young Scots here and working, if we could create the opportunities to bring those who've left back, if we could create a different system so those who study here can stay and contribute to our society, if we could bring in the skilled workforce which we need, we could change our demographics ourselves instead of simply drifting into a bigger problem in the future. That's what we need to do. But in the here and now, up until about 2030, our dependency ratio in Scotland is lower than the UK. So we've got the ability now to fund pensions fully, to pay them on time, while we make the changes in other policy areas to fix the underlying problem. And that's the great benefit of independence.
Very quickly, Jenny Mara, just very briefly.
It's just baffling because a lot of these things we could actually be doing now. You know, part of the SNP's narrative say we can't do these things, we can't do these things until we get independence. There are lots and lots of things that SNP could be doing to encourage growth in the economy, and oil is not going to be here forever. It's actually a declining resource. Yes, it's an important resource, but it is going to run out, and it actually costs more now to extract oil. So this idea that we're going to be super rich in an independent Scotland, frankly, just does not stand up to scrutiny.
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to take the next question now. And the next question comes from Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith.
If Scotland had a separate immigration policy to the United Kingdom, would that result in border controls?
Patrick Harvey.
I don't think there's any conceivable scenario in which the government of either the rest of the UK or of an independent Scotland would want to see border controls. And I think we'd be far more likely to see a scenario which is common across the rest of Europe, where countries don't have a sort of island fortress mentality that the UK is sometimes guilty of, but in fact know that a border is a normal thing. It's not a barrier. A border is something across which people live, continue relationships, move, travel, work, cooperate and trade and play. A border can be something that brings people together. It doesn't have to be something that keeps people apart. And that's the case within member states of the EU, which are independent countries, just as much as it can be the case between Scotland and England now within the UK. I regret, actually, that we might not have as much flexibility as I would wish on immigration policy, because I would like to change a great deal about it and have an immigration and an asylum policy which is fundamentally more humane than we have at the moment. But I'm not convinced that a single country can do that unilaterally. I do think that Scotland could be a voice for progressive change within these islands and within the European Union if we chose to.
OK. A couple of years ago, the Conservative Home Secretary, excuse me, Theresa May, was telling us that if there was a separate Scotland, her words, there could very well be some sort of border check. Is she right, Ruth Davidson?
Well, it's one of those it depends questions, because it depends very much on what the SNP policy is. If they want to have a markedly different immigration policy, then yes, that may affect what the rest of the UK does, should there be an independent Scotland. There is also a question here about European Union entry, new entrants to the European Union, and José Manuel Barroso has said that Scotland would have to apply the same as everybody else, have to join Schengen, which is a free movement area, and the UK has an opt-out from that. And one of the deals for Schengen is that you then have to have a border. So it is impossible for anybody on either side of the argument to say so definitively, but there is some doubt about it.
It's difficult to see, is it not, Stuart Hosey, how this would work if you had one country in this Schengen agreement, this borderless area, and the other country not in it. Well, given the nature of this island, and goodness knows this is close to the hearts of people here, how would that work?
You know, the scare stories just get bigger and bolder by the day. The Irish government said in relation to the common travel area between Ireland and the UK that it does not stop them having their own immigration policy.
Which is very close to the UK's.
It doesn't stop.
It's incredibly close. It's designed to be close to the UK's. Your white paper says in black and white that you want to have more lower-paid workers coming in here.
Well, you do have a different immigration policy.
You have a hugely different immigration policy.
The point that the Irish government made was having a common travel area did not stop the way they issued visas, who they allowed in, who they allowed to live, who they allowed to stay. It didn't change their policy. They could have the policy they wanted to have. And I really do think, given that we're talking about mainly people from Europe, we've got the free movement within Europe anyway, this is throwing up the border post scare story in a way which is quite irresponsible and absolutely wrong.
Well, I'm quite sure the people of Kelso have something to say about borders, so we'll come down first of all. Yes, sir, in the front row.
Thank you very much. Ruth Davidson has twice mentioned what José Barroso has said about the Scots joining the EU. Sir David Edward, the foremost legal brain in Europe, has said that there is no serious impediment to Scotland being part of the EU. I know who I believe.
All right, well, let's thank you. Thank you very much. We may come to that in a minute. Let's just stick, if we can, just to immigration for the minute. So if anyone has any points to raise on borders and immigration and so on. Yes, down the front.
The next Prime Minister of Ireland has said that he is more concerned about immigration if the UK leaves the European Union.
OK, thank you very much. Jenny Mara, well, let's just come back to the question for a minute. If the question was, if Scotland has a separate immigration policy from the UK, will border controls be necessary?
Yes.
I mean, it's been suggested this is wild scaremongering.
No, I mean, I think it's logical. You know, if you've got a different immigration policy a few miles down the road, of course there's got to be a border. And I've always thought this about the Schengen area in Europe. If you've got an area of free movement, and the UK has traditionally really valued its opt-out, and they're not going to give that up. So England will keep its opt-out from Schengen. So if we're part of the free movement area and England isn't, of course there's got to be a border. If you've got a different immigration policy, as Stuart said, of course there's got to be a border. That's just the way things work. That's your international independent country, if you like. Of course there's got to be a border.
Okay. So why are there not border controls between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland?
Because we have a common travel area, because,
right.
Ireland... And it does it on purpose, and there is agreement, and part of the common travel area agreement is that the immigration way of looking at things are very close, and because they're kept close on purpose, and that allows the common travel area to work. And that's my point. That is my point.
This is a bad thing, though.
Low-wage economy, as Stuart's saying, Alex Salmond's low-wage economy.
You said that.
No, I think
I didn't mention
it's in your white paper.
Jenny, neither you nor I will be voting for Alex Salmond's low-wage economy.
No, it certainly would be, but the border might be up by then, Patrick.
Sorry, can we just get some clarity on this? This is really important. Ruth, you think Dublin and London can come to an agreement where they have different policies at the moment in a common travel arrangement, but
because
London and Edinburgh...
Very, very close.
But London and Edinburgh
Your
can't...
stated position is that you want it to be hugely different.
London and Edinburgh can't come to an agreement because of the intransigence of Westminster politicians. Is that really what you're saying? Is that really what you're saying?
What I've said and what I continue to say is that the common travel area works and is agreed because the agreement is that it's very close to each other. What you're proposing is, in order to plug the pensions gap... No, I'm looking at your white paper. It's in your white paper, in black and white. You want to reduce the wages that people have as a minimum barrier to come in. You want to increase the number of low-paid workers coming to Scotland. You want to increase immigration in an independent Scotland. That is a hugely divergent tack from what the UK government is doing.
So much UK immigration just now compared to Scottish? How much divergent would it be?
Well, that's the question that you're having to propose and to answer,
you
because
don't know
it's in your white paper.
At
the moment, we do have the same immigration policy because we're one country, and I want to keep us one country.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what I'm
Yes, in the middle. Been waiting patiently. Yes, sir.
I would like to ask the members of the panel what they understand by the word nation, and which nation or nations do you belong to?
OK, thank you very much. We'll try to stick to this border question for a minute, and hopefully we'll come on to that as we move the discussion on. Where can we go? Up the back, in the corner at the back. Yes, sir.
I think one of the things you've done, you've sleepwalked into the next Parliament. And Ruth Davidson said the SNP government, after a yes vote, doesn't the SNP become redundant and we go back to the old politics in Scotland?
OK, thank you very much. There is something, is there not, in what the gentleman was saying, that this is about which nation we feel like we are here and which nation we want to be.
It is for some people. I think there are some people on both sides, the pro-UK side and the pro-independence side, who are strongly motivated by feelings of national identity.
But not you.
Frankly, I'm not. National identity and flags and patriotism mean very little to me personally. And I think there's probably quite a lot of people out there, particularly maybe some of the undecided voters, some of the people who are open-minded but not convinced yet, who don't see a national identity argument for this settling it. I think we need to be having a debate that's about big ideas about the future of Scotland. What kind of society do we want to live in? It's society and the structure of our economy, whether it's a fair and equal society, a sustainable society. These are the things that motivate me far more than how I feel about one flag or the other.
Thank you, Jenny Mara.
a nation is a common culture. It's people you feel an affinity with, you feel you have a common identity. And for me, my nation is Scotland. But I think that as part of this organisation, of part of the United Kingdom, it's actually an ideal scenario. Because I think if I was given a blank piece of paper now to draw up arrangements for our country, I think I might draw them up the way they are now. We actually share important institutions and share the risk and opportunity of common defence, of common intelligence, of a stronger economy with our neighbours on the same island that we live on and as part of the European Union. But we have the powers here in the Scottish Parliament to make decisions, and I want to make a lot more radical decisions to improve people's lives in Scotland in health and education, and we have those powers in the Scottish Parliament. I want to see us using them better. But that would...
All right, thank you very much. Don't forget, you can join tonight's debate on Twitter using the BBC IndieRef hashtag. And if you want to come and take part in a future programme, we'll be in Kirkcaldy in Fife on the 18th of March. And then on the 15th of April, we'll be in Kirkwall in Orkney. So to apply, you can join the audience. You can apply by going to the BBC website and searching for Referendum Debate. You can also email us this evening at newsonlinescotland@bbc.co.uk or text us on 80295 and we will publish a selection of your comments on the BBC Scotland News website. Let's go on to the next question now from Catherine Cotter.
Much has been said about an independent Scotland emulating the Scandinavian welfare model. Will our taxes need to be increased to pay for it?
Stuart Hosey, will our taxes need to be increased if we have the Scandinavian welfare model?
No, there's no requirement.
Well, hang on, is that because we're not having the Scandinavian welfare model? I mean, we should establish whether we're having it first.
I think the key thing is there's lots of visions of independence being bandied about, but right now we can fund everything we do with the tax we have, because Scotland's fiscal position...
We're running a deficit.
Scotland's fiscal position is stronger than the UK's and has been for 32 years. That's important. So we can fund everything we do and we continue to have a better fiscal position than that of the UK. That's been the case for over 3 decades. For over 3 decades. Now, if we want to do more, I hope we can grow the economy in a sustainable way. I hope we can export more and try and create 100,000 new jobs. I hope we can do things with corporation tax, not just to create tens of thousands of new jobs, but to grow GDP that way. There's lots of things I'd love to see done in terms of social provision. Lots of things I'd love to see done. But my key concern is to grow the economy, grow it in a sustainable way, not to put individuals' tax up, and make sure we have a balanced recovery and a balanced society.
Catherine Cotter, what's your view?
I'm just not convinced, I'm sorry.
Why is that?
I think that a lot of the policies that you seem to be gearing towards, like the childcare policy, and what we already have, I just can't see it being sustainable. And the Scandinavian countries that you refer to a lot in your white paper have some of the highest tax rate in the world. And the reason why they have the highest tax rate in the world is they've got this wonderful welfare system. But I just can't see the figures adding up. I'm sorry.
That question of childcare only works with independence because when the people are back to work, we get the tax take. When they're in full-time employment, there's less of a benefit cost. So the income we're saving and the tax we're generating through more people being in work actually pays for that policy. And the reason we can't do it now is because we don't have control of the taxes and we don't have control of welfare policy.
Yes, up the back with your hand up on the edge. Yes, sir.
Scotland has the very worst childcare in the UK because the SNP refused to do anything about it. You mentioned corporation tax. If we look at the white paper, the only tax change I was able to see was corporation tax. The SNP want us to believe that welfare can be improved, pensions can be improved by cutting taxes. Joseph Stiglitz, who's a member of Alex Salmond's hand-picked fiscal commission, said it absolutely will not work. And this chap's got he's a Nobel laureate. You're the Treasury spokesman. You tell us your version.
OK, we'll take a couple more and then we'll come back. Yes.
Could I just mention free personal care? We're very lucky in Scotland because we've got free personal care for over 65s, keeping people in the community and, you know, residential homes and things. But what's happened recently is they've changed the welfare benefits for people, and, you know, with the cuts that there is, it's affecting, you know, with the bedroom tax is really affecting people that can't afford to eat, or to, you know, you either eat or you have electricity. You can't do both, and we see that in the borders as well, which, you know, it's quite a big location. So, you know, why do we have to have this welfare reform from Westminster?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Mr. Hosey been going on about creating all these hundreds of thousands of jobs, but he's very conveniently forgetting that by doing away with Faslane and doing away with all the Air Force bases in Scotland, you will end up by losing tens of thousands of jobs. So how are you going to replace those?
Thank you. Let's just, for a minute, try to stick to taxes. I mean, the lady has a point, does she not, Ruth Davidson? If we're going to compare what an independent Scotland might look like with what we have at the moment, isn't that a pretty bleak vision of what we have at the moment with these concerns the lady was talking about?
Well, I think we have to get in proportion what we're talking about in terms of taxation and spending. And I think, you know, Stuart doesn't like us to mention that in the last 10 years, for every single year of the last 10 years, the welfare spend in Scotland has been more than the entire tax take from the entire North Sea, from all of that oil. Because we do have more spending north of the border here per head of population. And it's right that we do, because we've got a disparate geography, because we've got an ageing population. But that's one of the benefits.
It can't be entirely right. It can't be entirely right, because the Conservative government, the Conservative Liberal Democrat government, is committed to cutting it.
Cutting what?
The welfare bill.
Well, we want to cut down, for example, the housing benefit bill on the grounds that we spend more in this country on housing benefit than we spend for the Army and Navy combined.
Well, it's either entirely right or it's not. I mean, you know, either this welfare spend's entirely right or it's not.
No, I'm saying the fact that we get more in Scotland in welfare spending per head of population is right, because we have a disparate geography, because we have an ageing population, and that's one of the strengths of being part of a united kingdom, is that, you know, the people in greatest need get the most money.
All right, Patrick Harvey.
Well, this in many ways does, as a previous questioner suggested, get into what kind of government, what kind of policy would we have in place after the 2016 election? What kind of independent government would the Scots choose? And from me, you would not be hearing an advocate of cuts to corporation tax, giveaways to big business.
Well, let's be clear. Would you be hearing that you would agree that taxes would need to be increased to pay for a Scandinavian-style welfare model? Is that what you're in favour of?
Personally, I think that there would be people who have to pay. I should be paying more tax. Anybody on the salary of an MSP or an MP should be paying more tax.
I'm sure you could write them a cheque. Send it to the revenue.
I do give away quite a lot, but I think I should be paying more tax. But the questioner talks about you know, a kind of Scandinavian model as though there's a single set of answers. I don't think there's a single set of answers from the Scandinavian countries that we can import wholesale. I do think there are a really exciting range of lessons to learn about how to build a more equal society, how to build a society that cares for one another, where people looking after one another is more important than people competing with one another. And yes, many of the countries that you're talking about there do pay more tax and get a better welfare state and are happy with that deal. Let's recognise what's happened to the welfare state in this country over the last decades, over 30 years. We've seen the right, and some media voices as well, systematically undermine the social solidarity, the empathy that a welfare state depends on. One of the most exciting things that we could do with independence is recapture the idea of what a welfare state is all about and put that into practice.
I'd just like to mirror what Patrick Harvey's saying. I work in an agency that provides welfare benefits advice, and I think there's, as a yes voter, I understand that I'm taking a leap of faith voting yes, that you can't answer all the questions that I have. But I know that sticking with a Westminster government, I know the road that you're taking us down, and I don't want to be on that road.
Yes. Behind you, just behind you. Oh, right. Yeah.
just to come back to what Stuart Hosey was saying about taxes would not be increasing. No, I don't think taxes would increase if Westminster stopped spending Scotland's money on useless things that we don't need, like Trident.
And the man in front of you, yes.
Two parts to this.
No, please, no. One part's good enough.
All right. On the taxation issue, it's really a philosophical question. Do we want to be people who have control of our own money, or do we want the state to take far more of our money and spend it for us?
OK, thank you. Jenny Manor, on this question of, you know, what would welfare be like in an independent Scotland? Would it not be better than we have at the moment? Could we not have a better society like the Scandinavians?
Well, I'm not sure how we would pay for it. And that is my key question, this. It comes down to the economic model, it comes down to the shared risk, an opportunity of an economy of 60 million people. I think Catherine's right. I don't see how we would pay for the Scandinavian services while Alex Salmond cuts corporation tax by 3%. So what I would like to see is a more progressive tax system across the whole of the United Kingdom. And the chap at the front here was right about the 10p tax rate, and Labour is committed to reinstating that when we get back into government. And I would like to see... Well, we are. Well, we are committed to it. Ed Miliband has committed to reinstating the 10 pence tax rate, and we want to see a more progressive tax system right across the United Kingdom.
Briefly.
Yes, can I just come back on the 10p tax rate? Because at the moment, now, because of the raising of the tax threshold, not a single person that was on the 10p tax rate is paying any tax at all. We've taken the lowest paid out of tax altogether, and that's the kind of tax model I want to see, where the people on low incomes aren't paying taxations. And in fact, I want to see taxes reduced for individuals, because I think the people who best know how to spend a pound in their pocket is the person that earned it,
but
and not the government.
But they're increasingly paying fees and charges for services that councils can't afford to deliver anymore.
Stuart Hosey, very briefly, please.
I think Jenny's telling the truth. I think she does want to see a more progressive tax system. I don't doubt you for a single second. But when I called the vote against a tax cut for millionaires in Westminster, the Labour Party had all gone home to their beds.
OK, thank you. Thank you.
On the minimum wage.
All right, thank you very much. Let's take our next question now, which comes from Charlie Robertson. Charlie Robertson.
Is bullying the best tactic to keep Scotland in the UK?
Jenny Manor.
No.
Here, here.
But I don't actually see what we've seen over the past week as bullying. I think it's a political reality. I come back to the point about the English MPs. How on earth do they sell this deal, post a yes vote, if that happens, to their constituents? This is political reality. They will never get away with selling to their constituents that the Scots who voted themselves out of the United Kingdom now get this deal about being in the banking union, but still actually have to pay tuition fees if they send their kids up to a university in Scotland. It just doesn't make sense. The politics will change, and they will be looking after the constituents in England and Wales primarily. So I think it's more political reality than bullying, if I'm honest.
All right, there was a bit of a shout when Jenny Manor said that this wasn't bullying, so put your hands up if you were the people shouting. First of all, at the very back, yes.
Me?
Yeah, the man at the very back, just behind you.
We have a saying in Scotland, actually. It's like the big boy standing in the playground with the ball. It's my ball and you're not playing with it.
No, it sounds like Alex Salmond to me.
OK, and the man in front of you.
It seems to me that that's just emotive language, which is foolish.
Which is bullying, bluster, and so on.
Calling it bullying, yes, of course it's not.
OK, and we'll come down...
spelling out the truth of where Scotland is going and the problem it's creating.
OK, thank you. OK, thank you, and yes.
I think it was absolutely scandalous. Cameron phoning round, asking people in England to phone into Scotland and get their people to vote no up here. Absolutely scandalous.
Why? Why is that? Why?
It's up to the people in Scotland. How do they know down in England what's happening in Scotland? Somebody down in Bournemouth doesn't know what's happening in Kelso.
Okay.
So a phone number, absolutely scandalous.
What about someone in Berwick-upon-Tweed?
They're running scared, that's what's wrong with them.
All right, thank you. Yes. Yes.
Instead of bullying, what I would like to see is a coherent, consistent vision
from the No campaign for what they want to do with Scotland. I'm just not hearing that.
I'm very concerned about just over the border, as you mentioned just now, the people who live in Berwick and the people who live in Carlisle. I mean, is that bullying? That surely we have to continue living with these people. They are part of us in the borders. It's known as the borders. They're on both sides.
Stuart Hosey, you know, why divide these people?
That's absolutely the key point. One and the same people living the other side of a border. You get on now, you need to get on in the future. So can we stop having English Tory MPs turning up in Edinburgh to bully the Scots and to poison the relationships between Scotland and England?
I'll come to you in 1 second. Yes. Yeah.
My mother was English. She came from Northumberland. I still meet with my relatives down there, and they know my politics. They don't care. They just don't care if Scotland goes independent or not.
Thank you very much. Ruth Davidson, the people of England don't care.
Well, I think that the bullying question, if I come to that first, and I'll get on to the rest of the UK later. I mean, I think what we've seen is Alex Salmond say, I want to break up Britain, and once we've broken up, I want the rest of the UK to give us a currency union, to back our banks to be our banker of last resort, to do lots of other things, and I want the EU to give in to all of my demands. And then when people have turned round from the EU after being told by Alex Salmond what's in the EU's best interests, or turned round from the rest of the UK after being told by Alex Salmond what's in the rest of the UK's interests and said, actually that might not be in our best interest, he's turned round and said, you're all a bunch of bullies. And I'm not sure that actually that's the best way to conduct this debate at all. And if I could pick up the question here about the rest of the UK and this gentleman here.
Very quickly.
You know, I think it is important, and we've seen in other referendums in other countries like in Quebec and Canada, that for people in the rest of the UK who do care about Scotland, who don't want Scotland to leave the rest of the UK, if they've got friends and family here, to pick up the phone and say, do you know what? You might not feel valued, but we value you. We want Scotland to stay. I think that's a positive message.
Patrick Harvey, the question was, is bullying the best tactic to keep Scotland in the UK?
Well, I think, like some others, I think it might be a good idea to avoid that kind of language, even if people feel that George Osborne's intervention was not constructive, and I would say it was not constructive. I would like to see in the future, and I hope everybody on both sides would like to see the relationship between Scotland and the rest of the UK being one of neighbours, of friends, who trade, who play, who work together, who live together in friendship, but who have also the confidence when it comes to their own affairs to run them for themselves. Now, that's my vision.
That's devolution.
In a sentence, I want to put this. We're running out of time, Patrick Harvey.
Everybody can agree on whether you support devolution or independence.
We're running out of time.
Over the next 7 months, you're going to see worse language than this.
Thank you.
Better of all your politicians on both sides than that kind of language.
One sentence. Stuart Hosey, you literally have one sentence here. Is bullying, is suggesting that the other side are bullies a constructive tactic? One sentence.
It's a legitimate thing to do if it's true. At least David Cameron love bombed from the safety of the East End of London. Cameron was bang out of order.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm very sorry to those of you we didn't get a chance to come to there. Our hour is up, and if you want to join our audience, we'll be travelling around Scotland. Next month in Kirkcaldy on the 18th of March, the following month in Kirkwall on the 15th of April. To take part, just search the internet for BBC Referendum Debate. Thanks very much indeed to everyone on our panel tonight, and from the audience to Thomas and Kelso. Good night.
Should Britain have entered